So today I'm going to be going through my Goodreads and looking at every single book I've ever rated 5 stars. I used to be a huge reader growing up, and I tried to log as many books as I could remember a couple years ago on my Goodreads, but obviously I don't really remember. I thought it would be kind of fun to go back on my Goodreads and see everything that I've ever rated 5 stars and just kind of talk about it. If you're new here, my name is Shreya, and I would love it if you could hit the like button and subscribe, and let's get started. So I'm kind of scared to do this. I used to rate every book 5 stars, I think. I don't know if it is reflected in my Goodreads rating because I don't really go back and look a ton, but I'm going to just sort my books by rating and see what it is. Okay, so I'm going into every single book I've ever read and yeah, sorting it by rating. So the first thing I see, I think it's doing it by like oldest to newest. So I see a bunch of series that I rated, like all of them 5 stars. So I rated all of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians 5 stars, The City of Ember, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Hunger Games, Harry Potter, The Chronicles of Narnia, Twilight, and the Legend series by Marie Lu, and the Giver series. It's so funny to me and honestly very valid because I remember absolutely eating these books up. I forgot about some of these though. I have forgotten all about the Legend series. I do remember that I ate it up and I thought it was really good, but I 100% stand by all of these ratings. First of all, I'm watching the Disney Percy Jackson thing and it is really good. It's bringing back a ton of memories. I was just so obsessed with everything that author came out with, and that series was my childhood. Also, The City of Ember, I loved that series. Does anyone remember the movies? Because oh my god, I like have so many memories that are being restored right now. Those were horrible, right? I feel like they were pretty bad, but also I remember I kind of liked them, but the books were really good. You don't really hear anybody talking about them now. Hunger Games, obviously, but I only rated the first 2 5 stars. I hated Mockingjay and I still stand by that. Twilight, freaking love Twilight. I still think the books are good. I think the books are so good. Stand by it. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I have not read like the last 3 or 4 years. That is a series I outgrew, but I remember loving that. And Harry Potter, a classic. Oh, those were like the earliest books that I rated 5 stars. Next, we have Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, which is so funny. I had to read this for an AP literature class in high school, and our teachers really hyped that book. They were like, it is the best book you'll ever read. And you know what? I guess I did like it. It felt really rewarding to read it. We had to write like a 20-page paper based off of 1 paragraph of the book, and that will always stay with me. Like, if I had to read that book now, I would probably DNF it because it was really hard to read, but I stand by that 5-star rating. I just think it's funny because it's a classic that we had to read for school. Next, I have Looking for Alaska by John Green. I felt like I was reading something I shouldn't have been reading when I read this book. I remember, because I don't remember really anything about the book, but I do remember it had a lot of things and a lot of elements that I had never read in a book before. I felt like I was graduating in a sense and like reading a more mature book. But it's funny that I remember feeling like that, but I can't tell you what that book is about. Then we have another book that I had to read for AP Lit, and it's King Lear by William Shakespeare, and I still love King Lear. I still tell people it's like my favorite Shakespeare thing, but also it's just funny because I had to read it for school and I would never just like go ahead and read it. Then we have a book that I tell everybody is my favorite book to ever be written, and I've only read it twice or 3 times, but I haven't read it since like middle school. The Girl Who Could Fly by Victoria Forster, and I actually have it sitting on my shelf right now, but I'm looking on Goodreads and it's part of a series, which is really interesting because I obviously have never read anything other than the first book, but I remember that book really stuck with me. It's about a girl who can fly basically, and she goes to a school with all of these other kids with powers, and I just love that book. But I'm like afraid to go back and read it and just afraid that it's not gonna live up to the hype. Now we're getting into the books that I read when I was first getting into reading again 2 years ago. So the first one is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I love this book. I'm literally looking at it on my shelf right now. It is so good. It's so beautiful. The writing is just so lyrical, and I stand by that rating. I did just read Circe like 2 days ago. I read that book, and it was not as good as The Song of Achilles, in my opinion. It was still very good, but not as good as that one. So that's like the first book that I rated a 5 stars back when I got into reading. Okay, next we have A Man Called Ave by Frederick Backman. I still stand by this rating. It was such a cute book, and the movie was really, really good. Next, we have Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and I don't stand by this rating. However, it was like one of the first books that I read when I like got back into reading, and I just ate it up. I read the whole thing in a couple of hours in the back of a car, and I just thought it was like a literary masterpiece. Looking at the things that happen in the book, like it's just like so wrong. I don't know why I didn't catch it when I was reading it the first time, but she does like put something in her book. They are very addicting. Okay, next I have the Throne of Glass series and the ACOTAR series. So for ACOTAR, I only rated A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Silver Flames for my 5-star read, but the whole series is 5 stars, and Throne of Glass, that whole series, is a 5-star series for me. I actually read that series as it was coming out, and like nobody knew about it, nobody had heard of it, and I loved it. I thought it was so good, and so it's been really fun, like with TikTok and stuff over the past couple of years, like seeing everybody fall in love with it. But 5-star series, Throne of Glass is the best series in the entire world, and I stand by it. And I also want to get a tattoo for Throne of Glass, so we'll see if that happens. Okay, next we have All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name. I almost saw this author. He came to my town for like an author's event, but something came up, so I didn't get to go. I have not seen the TV series that's out on Netflix, but I do want to see that eventually. I did like this book. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. I don't think about this book very often. I do remember that I was really astonished by a lot of things that happened, and the way that the details were woven together and the different points of view I thought were very interesting, and it made me think a lot. And I do think that he is a very talented author. I do have Cloud Cuckoo Land on my TBR cart, but it's very intimidating. It's a very big book, and I don't know if I want such a complicated book, and that's what it seems like it is. But this one was good. It just takes me a while to read, and I don't think about it that much. The next one is Hothouse Flower, and yes, I love it. It is Daisy and Reich's story. It's the second Calloway Sisters book in the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, and the only book I own in a 10-book series, and I own it because it's so good and I can't stop thinking about it. And sometimes I wake up and I'm like, I need to go clutch this book to my chest because it's so good. Okay, next is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. It's really good, like so sweet, and the main guy is deaf and I'm deaf, so I related so much, and I just think it was such a sweet story, and I stand by that rating. Okay, I actually have 2 more 5 stars from the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, and they're both Calloway Sister books. It's Fuel of Fire and Long Way Down. So good. I just love Connor and Rose and Daisy and Reich again. They're just perfect. Okay, next is Everything I Never Told You. I love this book. It's the same authors that wrote Little Fires Everywhere, which might be on this list. We'll see. I was just like shocked while I was reading this book in the best way possible. It was really emotionally draining and really sad, and if a book really makes me emotionally drained, I'll probably love it. Next is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Again, I'm very sorry. This book made me in a horrible headspace because this book is like known for being sad, but it was just a little bit traumatic, honestly. But it really felt like I was reading a classic. The way it was written just felt really mature, and it felt like a classic, and I just can't rate it anything other than 5 stars because, oh my god, it was good. The Next is The Hideaway by Lauren K. Denton. I read this a while ago, actually. I don't really remember much about it. I remember that it was a really good story. I've never heard anybody talk about this before, but maybe I'll bring it back out and like reread it. But it was a very cute book. Next, we have The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith. Kind of a traumatic book, but like just so beautiful. Really love that. Next is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Again, probably wouldn't rate it 5 stars if I read it now, but it got me back into reading, and for that, it is 5 stars. Next, we have The Star-Touched Queen by Roshni Chokshi, and I know her other one, The Tale of the Flower Bride. I've also read that, but that was not 5 stars, but this one was so good. I remember I emailed her. I emailed the author of this book and she responded to me, and it was this whole thing. Love that book. I don't hear anybody talk about it, but they should. Okay, next we have Binge by Tyler Oakley. I met him at his book signing event and it was the best day of my life. I was a huge fan of his, so of course I gave it 5 stars. Next is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I read this over the summer this year, so I was like one of the last people to read it, and it was just so perfect and so good. Honestly, a 6-star book for me. Next is Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves, that duology. I gave them a 5 stars. I do love these books. However, I don't really think about them that often. Like, I forgot a lot of the details, so I don't know if it would still hold up to be 5 stars, but I did give them 5 stars. Next is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. I don't know why I gave it 5 stars, because now that I'm thinking about it, there were just way too many details about things that I don't care about in the book, but at the time I was like, oh my god, it's so good. Also, look up what happened with the author and the whole thing she was involved with, because it is crazy. Next, we have The Proposal. Definitely would only be 3 stars if I read it now, but I read this one like years and years ago. I hadn't read a book in a long time and I was just giving everything 5 stars, but it would definitely be 3 stars. Next is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. It's a memoir. I didn't know it was a memoir when I was reading it. I'm just finding that out now, so I was very young when I read it. Next is Daisy Jones and the Six. 6 stars, so good. Next, we have all the Heartstopper volumes. I'll talk about it more in my wrap up, but this is the new 6-star series for me. The Dragon Republic, which is the second Poppy War book. Highly recommend this series. Very good. Next is Anxious People by Frederick Backman. It was just perfect, and I would recommend this particular book to every single person. We have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I did like this. Again, Colleen Hoover, so iffy with me. I don't know if I would rate any of her books 5 stars. Next, we have In 5 Years. I love this book so much. It was like a time travel element, and it was just so good. Then we have Better Than the Movies. It was so cute. I stand by it. Okay, then we have The Blood Trader, which is the 3rd Prison Healer book. It's the last book in the trilogy, and it was really good and a perfect way to end the series. Next is Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. I think this is the only Coho book where I would actually stand by my rating, because it is my favorite book of hers. Next is This Can Never Not Be Real by Sarah Milano. This book I don't hear anyone talk about, but it was just crazy. Next is Sunset by Jessie Cave, and this is a beautiful story about love, but love after incredible loss and grief, and it was quirky and weird and just so profound, so I need to reread that. Next, we have Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I know a lot of people don't like this book and think that it's copying Love in Other Words, but I actually liked it better than Love in Other Words. Then we have all of the Magnolia Parks books. They are perfect, they are amazing, and everybody needs to go read them. Next is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This book is amazing. It's the Hunger Games and just so much tension, and it's so good. Then we have Yellow Faith by R.F. Kuang, and that book was just crazy. So I do stand by my rating for that. Next we have Carrie Soto Is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. this is like one of the best books I read all year last year. Okay, next we have It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover, and I don't know what I was on because that book is like 2 stars. It's definitely not 5. What was I thinking? Next is Belton's memoir. It's so good. I also gave Jeanette McCurdy's memoir 5 stars, but now I'm like, maybe I shouldn't rate memoirs, but those 2 were just so good. I just had to rate them all the stars. Okay, next we have Heartless, which is the second Chestnut Springs book. I don't really give romances like 5 stars, but that was good. Next we have I Fell in Love with Hope by Lan Colley. This book gets so much hate, and maybe it's because I spent a lot of time in hospitals growing up that I just automatically connected with this book. Okay, next is a recent read, and it's The Spectacular by Fiona Davis. I'll talk about it more in my wrap up. Surprisingly amazing. Then we have A Curse for True Love, which is the last book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. Is it actually 5 stars? No, but by that point I was so in love with all of the characters. It just had to be 5 stars. And then the last book on this list is Shark Heart. Please read this. It's about a guy who gets diagnosed with an illness where he is for sure going to turn into a great white shark, and it was fantastic and beautiful and just it was everything. Alright, so those were all of my 5-star reads, and I stand by mostly all of them, which is so funny and just great to know that I stand by my ratings. And even if I didn't, in the moment, it just must have done something to me in the moment where I just had to rate it 5 stars. Alright, I hope you enjoyed going down memory lane with me, and I will see you in the next one.